Lesson 4. Creating messages and buttons. Let's start by recapping where we are so far. We have a welcome conversation that can take us to the button-driven conversation. The button-driven conversation can lead us to the NLU conversation. The NLU conversation can take us back to the button conversation. We've also adjusted the default conversation so that we can trigger the application, move to the welcome conversation, and then flow from button-driven to NLU and back without issues. In this lesson, we'll cover creating messages and previewing the application. Step 1. Create messages. Messages are associated with what we call outgoing intent. Outgoing intents are intents that the application has. They are sent to the user. But of course, the user does not receive an intent. The user actually receives a message that carries the application's intent. Just as that the application receives a message and attempts to map it to an intent, the relationship is mirrored, which makes it consistent and coherent. More information on this can be found in our docs. Let's start with the welcome conversation. Click on the welcome conversation and then click on the bubble with a pen inside to go to the message editor for messages within the welcome conversation. You should see just one message. Click on it so we can start editing it. As you can see, it already has a button associated with it. We are going to change it to drive us to the various conversations we want to get to. Click the edit button to go into the message and replace the OK with drive with a button. Then in the button functionality, we want to simulate user intent. Then select the request button driving intent from within the button-driven conversation. Also, add a second button that will take us to the NLU conversation and save the message. When the user clicks either of those buttons, we will find ourselves at the top of the scenario looking for open conversations we could enter. Because further up, our conversation scenes and turns were set to open. Therefore, we will find our way through to one of those two conversations based on the button we press. Great. That takes care of the welcome conversation. Let us move to the button-driven conversation. Go back to the designer, navigate to the button-driven conversation, and click on the message editor for that conversation. You should see 3 messages that we need to deal with here. The first one is the welcome message, which invites us to click away with a button. The second will invite us to either switch or stick 2 buttons. And the third will welcome us back 2 buttons after the NLU conversation. Let's dive into each one. For the first one, we removed the text block, click on the X next to the message, and added a button block with the same text, but then a button called click away and a simulated intent of click away. And select save. And then navigate back to the message overview and select the welcome to button scene in the breadcrumbs menu to get the 3 messages. Select the button confirmation message. This message will give us the choice to stick to buttons or switch to NLU. As you can see, the stick to buttons button just simulates the click away intent. Once more, while the switch to NLU button will simulate the switch to NLU intent, that is within the button-driven conversation. Okay, you should be getting used to this by now. Last one to go. The welcome back to buttons message. This one will also give us a button to click away. And we are done with the button-driven conversation. So let's head to the NLU one and fix messages there. In the NLU conversation, we have just 2 messages to adjust here. The first one we want to enhance so that it invites the user to sing. The second one gives us the choice to go back to the button-driven conversation or sing again. There you have it. All that is left now is to review the application in the preview player or deploy it on a website. Now for step 2, preview application. To test your application, navigate to the preview section and wait for your bot to load. You should then see a web chat appear with the welcome response you created. Thereafter, interact with your bot and see whether everything works. Note that when testing the NLU simulation, it needs to exactly match what you set up as the intent name. For example, Radio Gaga. And that's it. Congratulations. You've now made your first ever button-driven bot and even simulated some NLU. Now, while the default callback interpreter is essential for button-driven interaction and can help with some prototyping, the actual NLU will need to use an NLU interpreter, which we will discuss in the next tutorial. See you then.